Have you heard the story of how the AMA was found guilty of racketeering? What they did to force a judge to find them guilty of criminal business practices and file a permanent injunction, a legal order to cease and desist. I'll share all the details of the trial, but first I've got to introduce you to the characters of the story. In 1900, there were 4 versions of doctors. MDs were called allopaths. Homeopaths were trained in the same schools, but disregarded strychnine, arsenic, and bloodletting in favor of homeopathic medicine. There were the eclectics, who learned from the natives, the native herbs. And there were the chiropractors. Chiropractic was just hatched in 1895. A magnetic healer popped a bone in a guy's back, and his hearing was restored. No kidding, that's the story, and everyone is sticking to it. Anyway, this guy starts cracking backs, and people love it. And after a couple successful years, he begins teaching his practice to others. By 1910, they were growing rapidly. 4 schools, but no national coverage. So they didn't get trashed in the 1910 Flexner Report, funded by Johns Hopkins, a known slave trader, and the Rockefeller and Carnegie Foundations. It seems odd that the doctors who we all acknowledge did more harm than good somehow got to decide who is valid, but that's how the story goes. They just called names and claimed their throne. After that, medicine had complete control of healthcare, so when chiropractors caught their attention, they just had them arrested for practicing medicine without a license. In fact, the inventor of chiropractic, D.D. Palmer, was the first dude arrested. He said, "I'm not practicing medicine. I don't use drugs or surgery." But he was found guilty and sentenced to 23 days in jail or pay a fine. Several years before Gandhi famously did the same, D.D. Palmer refused to pay the fine and did his time. It became a badge of honor to do time for helping people. The longest sentence was over 2 years, and the most recent was 1975 in Louisiana. But not practical, so they filed as a different kind of doctor with their own license. And by 1935, chiropractic was licensed in 40 states. In 1950, chiropractic is continuing to grow in popularity. The AMA meets and declares this chiropractic thing an emergency, writing in confidential documents that they wanted to contain and eliminate the cult of chiropractic. But it must be covert. The hand of the AMA must not show. They make a policy that doctors can no longer associate with these quacks. If you do, you will lose your license and hospital privileges. Then they went to work on legal boundaries. They lobbied against chiropractic getting reimbursed by Medicare, workers' compensation. They lobbied to raise standards of doctoral prerequisites. So if you think that medical degree standards are for your benefit, nope. It was to bury the chiropractors. In 1963, after the legal routes failed, the AMA created the Committee on Quackery to slander, damage credibility, and destroy reputations. Heck, that's all it took for homeopathy and herbalism. Court documents indicate that besides the public name-calling, they wrote articles for Ann Landers, scripts for TV shows, and embedded propaganda into mainstream education. That's why you all think that herbs and homeopathy are quackery. They had Dr. McSteamy tell you that herbs are bullshit. All of this was detailed in their confidential internal documents. And you'd never guess how the chiropractors got their hands on it. Apparently, the AMA had slandered L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology. So Ron put moles in the AMA headquarters, copying these documents with the damning information. That's super unhealthy, by the way. A true healer would never slander or call names. A healer would point out hurtfulness, but the AMA didn't have any evidence of harm from any of the people that they slandered. Certainly not as much harm as they were causing. Jeez, after turning opium poppy into death and destruction, they prescribed alcohol to the wealthy during Prohibition, earning millions per year. Then they promoted cigarettes for profit in the 30s, only ending because of a heart attack epidemic in the 50s. And while trashing everyone else, they experimented on humans for 40 years. Just good people. The Scientology mole called himself Sore Throat, after the famous Deep Throat who provided the inside info on Watergate. Sore Throat sends these damning documents to the media and chiropractic leaders, encouraging the chiropractors to sue the AMA. They file in 1976 and go to trial in 1980. The AMA defends by saying they were doing the right thing because chiropractic is unscientific quackery. And they actually win. The jury says yes, it is okay to restrain trade if the trade is quackery. The chiropractors appeal, arguing that this is not a case about whether we deserve to be bullied. We are licensed to practice. So that has already been determined legally. The decision must be based on whether they illegally restrained their ability to practice a legal profession. The chiropractors request a bench trial where the judge determines legality on the letter of the law, not influenced by name-calling or perceived authority. The chiropractors submit a study of back pain, showing that chiropractic care resolved back pain over 50% faster than medical care, to establish grounds for competition. Clearly bad for medical business and authority. A motive established and damning internal documents, clearly stating that their intention was to eliminate chiropractic. A health hazard, a cult of quackery. Remember, these were the dudes that were using poison as medicine when they eliminated minority and natural doctors with a vicious public attack. Now they were caught red-handed, not working for the greater good, just to control the market and profit. The judge concluded that if there were in fact a concern for patient well-being, they wouldn't have refused to see patients just because they had their backs cracked. And a healthy human or business would attempt to address concerns directly, like this. Real doctors? Dr. Starfield said that you guys are the third leading cause of death. That is not okay. Please stop hurting people or I will contact the authorities. Oh, the authorities don't care? Because they're in business with you? Oh, I see. The judge concluded evidence at the trial showed that the defendants took active steps, often covert, to undermine chiropractic educational institutions, conceal evidence of the usefulness of chiropractic care, undercut insurance programs for the patients of chiropractors, subvert government inquiries into the efficacy of chiropractic, engage in a massive disinformation campaign to discredit and destabilize the chiropractic profession. Currently, these are the people who decide what are facts and engaged in numerous other activities to maintain a medical monopoly over healthcare in this country, like embedding propaganda in TV shows, newspaper articles, and mainstream education, K through 12. The sad news is they never owned up to it. They filed an appeals which upheld the judge's decision in 1990. That's 30 years ago, folks. They were found guilty of criminal business practices, not to protect you, but to protect their own profit and control. They changed their official position. They scooted over, giving the chiropractors a tiny seat on their throne. Back and neck aches. But in 2023, chiropractors are still referred to as quacks, left over from the slanderous assault that went on for decades. In 2010, my patients were turned away from an urgent care because I wasn't the right type of doctor. In 2015, my insurance contract and 70% of my income was terminated for helping a woman with a medical condition. Now, they have learned from their battle and exert control through our government, enforced by our justice system. Rights are removed for not taking their for-profit drug, and lives and professions are ruined if you question them. The chiropractors won in 1990, but the people are losing health and losing control over their own health because this toxic, abusive organization won't acknowledge their hurtfulness. They won't allow different perspectives. They are just doing what they have to do when you know you are right and anyone who disagrees is wrong, bad, and a danger. Yep, medicine invented that abusive form of bullying. Call people a danger, whether they harmed anyone or not, and create an angry mob to cancel people. Now, the same people behind Big Pharma own the news, all channels, so they can cover everyone. We are Democrats, herbs are bullshit. We are Republicans, herbs are bullshit. It's the same bullying for control and profit. They're just better than ever at being covert.